Schizoid personality disorder is one of those mental disorders that people often get all wrong because people who have it are usually cool with it and don't really feel bothered by it. It's classified as a cluster A disorder, which basically means it can come off as a bit odd or quirky for most people. But in simple terms, imagine just not giving a damn crap about emotional connections or even feeling much of anything, whether it's good or bad. There is actually more to this though, but first off, let's clear up some common misconception, which is that schizoid personality disorder is schizophrenia. No, that's completely wrong. They're completely different disorders. Schizophrenic people have psychosis often, like hallucinations or delusions, while schizoids don't really have to deal with any of that. Schizophrenic people also tend to act compulsively, but schizoids, again, they're all the times they're just like, whatever. They look like boring or something like that. I know they both have this word schizo in them, but that doesn't mean they're the same. There are actually a bunch of other disorders with schizo in the name too. There are a bunch of them that just tend to make things more confusing. But what's up with this schizo prefix in the first place? It actually comes from the Greek word schizein, meaning to split. It's used for conditions where there is a split or disconnection in thinking, emotions, behavior, or perception of reality. For schizoids, it's mostly a split from their own emotions. You might notice that they have a pretty flat expression most of the time. They might even crack a smile here and there just to keep things from getting awkward in social situations. And these people really aren't interested in close relationships unless there is something in it for them. There's some pragmatic benefit, like maybe money from family or talking about nerdy stuff with a distant friend. There are loners who would rather work alone because social interactions just feel like a chore to them. It's not like they're anxious or anything. They just don't care about the hassle. They don't care about romantic or sexual relationships either. Even if someone made a move on them, a schizoid's reaction would be like, well, whatever, I don't care. He doesn't even have a waifu. But don't get it wrong, they're not asexual. They just don't care much about sex. Even if a girl asked him to hook up, he would probably rather stay home and, well, take care of business himself. They might even have hobbies, but it's not like they actually enjoy them. It's more about killing time or finding some intellectual or aesthetic satisfaction rather than any real pleasure. This doesn't mean they're depressed or anything, even though they have this anhedonia. They're just kind of like, they're boring people. They just don't feel anything. They don't even feel emptiness. And that doesn't mean schizoids always have no emotions. It's more that they struggle with expressing them. And even their own emotions are kind of like less intense, very, very less intense than most people. Like if something really, really, really awesome happens to them, they might feel a tiny bit of happiness, but then it's just right back to how they usually are in no time. And same thing goes for bad stuff as well. When it comes to compliments or criticism, they might seem like they don't care at all, but deep down there is probably a little something going on, like feeling skeptical or uncomfortable. But since they can't really express how they feel, they just mostly keep it inside. They've got a really, really wild immaginazione and don't really have big goals or passions or any of that. They just want to be left alone and be comfortable doing their own thing. But here is something interesting. If a schizoid goes through some heavy social stress like getting bullied, they might have brief psychotic episodes, which is rare, but it happens. They might even get depressed, but once they're through it, they'll bounce right back to their usual self. Schizoids are also pretty apathetic towards others. They might say sorry if they mess up just out of a sense of duty, or thank you just to be polite. They might even use emojis in chats or talk like everyone else just to avoid being too serious or to keep the conversations going. But don't be fooled. They're not doing it because they actually feel that way. They've just got their own reasons, like keeping things running smoothly or avoiding drama, etc., etc. Now, if you're a regular person, this might all sound kind of mind-blowing. You might think that being a schizoid is like having a superpower, being more self-reliant and not falling for all the propaganda out there. They're kind of also like stoics, but if you think about it, it's kind of like playing Minecraft in survival mode, but cheating so you never die and get all the diamonds you want right away. Like, you kind of miss out the fun of actually playing the game. But for schizoids themselves, they don't care about that either, because they barely feel anything in the first place, including emptiness itself. It's almost like they think like robots, but not really quite. So if you tick off at least 4 of the 7 schizoid criteria, which you can see on the screen, you are, according to the DSM-5 or DSM-4, whatever, you're probably leaning towards being a schizoid. But remember, you won't really know for sure until a professional checks you out. Also, just because you sometimes feel detachment doesn't mean you're a schizoid, and just because you feel indifferent towards normal facts in real life and see them as just unnecessary or are kind of bothering you doesn't mean you're a schizoid. When you could find some community online you relate to and feel sympathy for them, or when you also feel sympathy for your own waifu when you watch some anime, if you do this, just know for sure you're not a schizoid. You just have this in-group, out-group bias, which is a completely normal thing in all human beings. You just feel like you belong to a group, which is not in real life, which is on the internet. It's just like you're a social outcast, just like me. I also thought before that I'm also a schizoid, but schizoids generally lack any interest with any human interaction whatsoever. This disorder is more common in dudes, especially if you're not very outgoing or didn't get much love from your parents or had a rough relationship with them or have schizophrenia-like stuff in the family. And by the way, having schizoid personality disorder doesn't mean you're gonna get schizophrenia. It's more like schizophrenia or schizotypal personality disorder that could lead to schizoid traits, not the other way around. Some people might still mix up schizoids with people on the autism spectrum who actually want to socialize but struggle with it, or with folks who have avoidant personality disorder who avoid closeness because they're scared of getting hurt, while schizoids, again, they just don't care about that stuff in the first place. Now, about treatment, there is really no cure, quote-unquote, for schizoid personality disorder, mostly because there is not much research on it, because schizoids are just indifferent to their condition and are actually pretty okay with it. And honestly, once you get what this disorder is all about and start thinking about what it's like, you'll realize it's not really good or bad. It's just like a different way of seeing the world. But yeah, there are some therapies that might help schizoids dealing with some stuff like social anxiety. I've made a video about that could kind of help, or depression, or where people are pushing their boundaries and bothering them, whatever. But it's not about changing who they are. These are just for dealing with specific situations in their lives. And if you know a schizoid and you're trying to talk to them, just accept that they're not gonna change. If you try to force them, they'll probably just ghost you. It's better to keep things neutral. Don't dive too much into personal stuff because it could get uncomfortable to them. But that doesn't mean you should treat them like robots or anything. Just respect how they are. That's literally it. And yeah, that's about it.